Welcome back to another 3 questions in 3 minutes with our Power Women. I am joined today by Lynn Kelly. Lynn is the Executive Director for New York Restoration Project. And I think it's safe to say that Lynn loves parks. Before joining New York Restoration Project, she served as Executive Director of New Yorkers for Parks. And she also helped secure a $44 million investment in the New York City Parks Department. So Lynn, our parks, thank you. Welcome and thank you for being here with me.
Thank you, Anna. I'm delighted. This is a lot of fun.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about your organization now and what the mission of NYRP is.
Sure. So it's kind of ironic that I'm speaking to you on probably is one of the hottest days of the year in New York. We're all sweltering here. It puts an exclamation point on how important green space is in New York City. At NYRP, we were founded over 25 years ago by Bette Midler, who just started by picking up trash in a local park. Fast forward all these years, and we're a nonprofit organization that works at the intersection of environmental justice and social justice in New York City. We run 52 community gardens with a volunteer network of community gardeners throughout the city. We build about 20 on average new community gardens a year with partners as well. And then we operate 2 parks on behalf of the Parks Department up in Inwood, much like a conservancy, operating, maintaining, and programming. Our mission is that, we believe that nature is a fundamental right of every single New Yorker. And we do that through partnerships with communities, public agencies, private sector. And we look to program and work with these partnerships to ensure equal access and equity in green space in New York.
I'm also really glad that you mentioned the kind of intersection between social justice and environmental justice, because I think it's become clear to everyone over the past few years, especially, that these movements are not separate and they're very entangled. So I'm hoping that you could talk a little bit more about the ripple effects that your work with environmental justice has in terms of gender equity, in terms of racial justice, and how these components are all kind of connected.
Still today, neighborhoods where Black and Brown people live do not have the resources, the access, the governmental support in the same way that other neighborhoods do throughout the US, but we also see this in New York City. So what does that mean in terms of environmental injustice? Well, as you can imagine, neighborhoods where Black and Brown people predominantly live in New York City have less trees, less access to green space, higher recorded temperatures. They suffer from urban heat island effect, much proportionally larger than other areas. They have disproportionate health issues as a result of one of the reasons is lack of green space, and often have food deserts, lack of healthy produce accessible in the area. If you take this one step further, and what does this mean for women and how does this affect families? So during COVID, you may recall, everything but actual parks was closed for a long time. Playgrounds, asphalt lots, anywhere where people could go. So imagine you're a mom at home trying to work at home, or perhaps you're unable to work. Your kids are going nuts in the house because they're schooling from home, or sometimes not at all, depending on their age. And to get outside to actual green space where there's a grass or a tree, that might have taken multiple buses or a train in the height of the pandemic for you to get to, because your local playground was closed or because your local schoolyard was closed. So I say all this to make a fine point that environmental injustices in New York City are directly tied, again, to social injustices. And those social injustices have direct impact on women and family and kids.
What can we expect from lawmakers? What can New York City lawmakers do to prioritize urban gardening, to prioritize the expansion of green spaces in an equitable way? And what are you hoping to see from policymakers locally?
So there's a number of things that local policymakers and government can do. And I think we're started to head in that direction, but more work needs to be done. So for example, on the city budget, let's really genuinely take care of and maintain the public parks, plazas, playgrounds, rec centers, waterfronts that we already have. Government has to make a sound decision that it's going to equitably invest in the agency that cares for these properties. If COVID has taught us anything, it's that we value our parks and our open space because there was no place to go, right? You had to get outside. Okay, so we've seen an uptick. We know people go. We know it's more crowded. We know that demands more maintenance and attention. Let's actually apply the resources to it to get it done. And let's prioritize those neighborhoods that have lacked for generations.
It sounds like we're on the right track for some things, and there's still more work to be done. And I'm sure that you're going to be at the forefront of that. So thank you so much, Lynn, for joining me today and for being a power woman.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.